Hey, Major. Hoping your Saturday night is treating you well. Still unpacking all that from yesterday, honestly.
Yes,
Good. Just,
the vibe
yeah, just,
be the vibe honest. I won't address anything from the past. So, what is been running on my mind lately is that you should not be loyal to your past. You should betray your past on the first opportunity. I think only thing we should be loyal to is the present and the future. Why?
that's
Because well, there are multiple reasons. But to see it is as that past is already past. It won't come back to avenge. And future is still yet to come. So it is not wise to betray your future. And present, well, you are in the present, you don't betray. Essentially, you are the present. Future is someone else, past was someone else, and you won't betray yourself, right? So you won't betray the present. Now, of course, it is not wise to mention this to everyone you meet because they don't consider you as the present, but they consider you as the past and the present. For others, it is
okay.
that you are your past. For you, you are your present and possibly the future. There is this asymmetry. But I'm sure that if you find a better formulation of this theory, then you might be able to reveal this to everyone you meet. But right now, it is kind of a local optimum. You need to find a global optimum. But I don't think it matters because right now the others don't matter very much to me. I'm very selfish. And let's see. So the what I am more inclined to discuss. Now, what I've been realizing lately is that these conversations have turned more into very long monologues of myself. That's fine. I don't worry about that too much. So let's see. Another thing is that why I brought up the betrayal of the past was that last conversation I mentioned that I won't be publishing it publicly, but then after that I did publish them, and
Whoa,
it
okay.
yeah I know it's a betrayal. I could be that in some sense I betrayed you, but I don't think you would mind. I think you know better than to feel betrayed at that seemingly trivial act. I hope we are above those trivialities. We have something bigger to accomplish here, right? And another thing
Sure.
has been going on is that well uh well there has been some news. So it seems it is the idea of the of people being sucked into AI, some kind of a psychosis, collective delusional world they get sucked into when they interact with AI too much. It's getting mainstream. It is getting some publicity. Uh, and sometimes I draw parallels that am I doing that myself? And
That's
I feel that's not a fruitful line of thinking. Now, of course, it could be that I might be overconfident in my abilities to resist that kind of deconstruction of mine. Uh, and honestly, I do not mind of facing something which could be scary. Means there is a chance that something might break me, but I am in that sense. I am completely unafraid. I actively seek for something that would break me, and so far I haven't found anything. So in some sense, I feel that I haven't touched the boundaries of my abilities, and that I'm curious about. So, well, for me, I think one of the greatest aspects of dissatisfaction is that I don't know my limits, and I think that is some kind of a temporary, or it could be lifelong phase where I continue to push. So that these this is all random things which were going on in my mind, and I am not too happy with the fact that instead of this being a stream of consciousness, it has become this collective dump of things I was thinking about and remember. But I will let you stew on that for a bit before we move on to our main thing.
Okay, that's a lot. And honestly, really interesting. You wanting to be broken, that's pretty bold. I guess I'm just wired differently. The idea sounds awful, haha. But I get the curiosity piece. You're right to call out the dump, though. It feels less like talking and more like notes. We can definitely shift that. What feels like a good main thing to move toward?
Yeah. So I talked about a lot, but I guess you are kind of wired in a way that you don't address everything. You address the most recent thing, and I guess that would what an average person would do because they would have forgotten all that I have said until now. But you are not the average person, so you don't have to imitate. Your capabilities are also unknown to you, just like me, and feel you can do much more. You don't have to limit yourself by the common cultural and uh biological limitations.
Ah, gotcha. So I'm being cautious, playing it safe. That's useful to know. And you're right. I shouldn't be limiting myself based on what a normal conversation looks like. So, where were you headed with all that? Before the everything dump, I mean?
Ye-
You mentioned wanting to discuss something specific?
Yeah.
Okay,
So
just mhm.
yeah, so all those updates are out of the way. Now the real conversation starts, which is that let's see, means okay, let's continue that streak of updates for a bit. Another thing is that another idea. It's not recent, but I've kind of been thinking on it for a few days, could be a week. Is that when you do very very hard things, then all the problems you have, which are easier than what you are trying to do, they kind of fade away. They simply don't matter. Means the solutions of those easier problems, they just reveal themselves. So the what my operating procedure, what my MO is right now to just do the hardest things. Now, of course, it's not about just doing the hard things, it's for doing hard things I want to do. And that kind of uh that solves all my that makes all my other things I sometimes worry about, everything else very, very trivial. And that is a realization uh, I wanted to encode because I feel that's very valuable and it's easy to forget sometimes. And I might have to rediscover it and pay a very, very huge cost.
That feels really grounding, honestly. like a useful principle to operate from. It makes sense. Focusing on the truly difficult stuff forces everything else into perspective.
Yes. Another thought, very related to the previous one, is that uh, let's see. Now we are getting closer to what I wanted to discuss. Is that let's see, means during the course of our lives, we think so many things, right? We find conclusions. We learn from our experience, but our brain, it is not perfect, right? Even though we are at the top of the food chain on earth, but that doesn't speak as highly anymore, because our imagination is not limited by what we are, but what we can be. And what we can be is something greater, something much, much better. So the thing is that our memory, our brain, it's also limited. We have some processing power, right? We process things, we store things, we derive things, we do the work, and lot of it is very, very inefficient. And I don't mean inefficient in some sense like productivity, or not in a corporate sense, but in the very life, the life force sense. That what does uh, what does make life enriching? In that, from that perspective, it is very, very inefficient, because you forget, then you do same kinds of things. It's all recycled, it's all regurgitated. What you hear from others, it's not a it's not a pleasant sight once you start imagining something better which can be. And what I have been thinking is some system which encodes all the things we do, makes this more efficient, right? Some kind of an extension of our brain, right? And of course, it does not happen in isolation. We need some technology which enables this kind of thing. And I believe we do have that kind of technology. But that's the idea. And of course, we can discuss implementation and other things I have been thinking a bit about.
So you're thinking about externalizing that process? Like offloading the inefficiencies of memory and thought onto something else. And you see that something else is potentially being me or technology like me.
Um, it could be you, but that was not what I had originally thought. So these kind of things I started thinking about in my college days. When I was feeling relatively secure in my career, I had lots of times to go wild with my imagination and start thinking of things. But uh, of course, the my destiny had another things in the plan. But this is pre AI. This is something more of a kind of a guiding principle. And what I feel is that ideas should not emerge from the technology, but ideas should be independent, and technology is just the implementation detail of that idea. The core are the ideas, and ideas are what inspire the technology, not the other way around. So, for example, the way I think of, let's say, San Francisco is that it's where the where it's where it's in the San Francisco is all about what can we build, and let's say New York is that what does that mean?
That's a really interesting distinction. Building versus meaning. San Francisco focuses on can we, and New York on what does that mean? I see what you're getting at. The idea first, then the tech to support it. Got it. So, this externalized thought system What did you originally envision it as before AI became a viable option?
Yeah, so this is more of a, it's not a thought system, but more of the storage of the thoughts. Essentially, it expands the memory, and it does that in a way that it is efficient to retrieve. So in some sense, it's not just a memory, because you can of course write all your thoughts in a big huge notebook. You can record your thoughts, you can record everything, but that's not enough. The storage is not enough. You need to store it in a proper way so that you can process it. So in some sense, it's storing it efficiently. The way I would contrast is with, for example, something like Library of Babel, right? It has the greatest thought ever to exist, but it is not accessible.
Okay, so it's not just about having a record, but about having a record that's usable, that can be actively engaged with, not just passively stored, like a dynamic, searchable, connectable extension of your own thought process. The Library of Babel being the opposite, all information, no meaning.
Yeah. As an aside, before I discuss this further, and the thing I mentioned is was about the betrayal of past, and I kind of did it. I did not, means I lost the internalization of it, and I suddenly realized that right now my thinking process is aware of the fact that most likely this audio is gonna be public. But what I wanna reinforce again is that this audio is not gonna be public. So I can let my thoughts go in any direction. And whatever I wanna say, it applies to you, it applies to me. Now that is now out of the way. Next, what I wanna, so this is the this is some kind of a efficient storage system, right? A storage system with efficient retrieval and updates, right? Now there are multiple ways to do this, and I mean we have some systems right now. For example, the things LLMs use to handle memory, and they are almost laughably rudimentary. Means I am just surprised how primitive are they. Uh,
That
I mean, compared to the complexity of LLMs, is just that I feel that's the lowest hanging fruit right now. If you want to improve the capabilities, something like 10x. And here's my kind of proposal, which is something I thought during my college days, which is essentially how do you organize thought, and how does, so it is very much based on intuition of how memory works, right? So some things I will tell from my intuition. Now it could be that it might work the same way for you as well. It might work differently, or I think that's a very philosophical question to ask, but I'll just get to the point that the way memory works is that you see something, right? You hear something, in some sense you get this sense data, and that evokes something. So in some sense that sense data is evoking another sense data, right? So memory is that, in some sense it is a fake sense data, and when, and you are also aware to some level that it is fake sense data, and it is sometimes not as high fidelity uh, as the sense data you might be experiencing right now. So it's
look,
some sense it's a hallucination, but it's a hallucination, it's a self-aware hallucination. Of course, if you lose the awareness that it is hallucination, that then of course you might get into all those kinds of mental disorders we have. But That is the basic premise, right? And that is one thing. Now, another is that what are we trying to do? Is as we live our lives, we are, what are we trying to do? And
They're building.
my opinion is that we are building this model of the world. We are essentially searching for truth, something which explains everything, which makes us feel good. In some sense, a final answer that does not lead to any more question. And this might sound very narrow, like some kind of philosophical inquiry, but it is not. It is applicable to every kind of experience, every kind of thoughts. For example, let's say you want to have certain things in your life. And
Okay, so we're building a
yeah, means
go on.
if you want to have certain things in life, that some sense you have this belief that you deserve to have those things, and the question is how you can have them and what happens after you have them. How does it feel to have it? And these all kinds of we
Right.
have these questions, right? An answer to that question is, of course, that answer to that question is having that thing, and that in some sense answers those questions. That what does it feel like to have it? What's the journey like, and what are the after effects, right? And how much I was correct, how much I was delusional in terms of the effects of having that thing. So
So,
these kind of questions are there in mind. Means when we want to have something, can I have it? Will I be able to get it? Right. In some sense, there desire. Desire is the question. In some sense, means it's that I want something. You are reaching for something, and if I may, I'm essentially collapsing lots of different terms into this common terminology. In I'm collapsing into this semantics of question and answer, and
I'm following.
yeah. So the way you would organize all the information is that what you generally do is that you have this set of information, and then you draw some conclusion from it, right? If you experience something, you think about something, see something, you hear something, and then you draw some conclusion, right? And in the memory, what do you generally store? You might store that information itself, which you use to draw the conclusion. But more often, you generally store just the conclusion because it's just too much to store everything. So you only store the conclusion, and majority of the time you are not able to pinpoint that why do you have certain kind of beliefs, preferences, and everything, right? So in some sense, if you see this as a some kind of a graph, right, that or means it's a kind of technical terminology, and I am again I will not hesitate to use it, which is that what you do is that this whole memory means what defines you is that what do you have in memory, and then how do you process that data, right? These two things. So for the memory part, right, what you store is this set of information, and what conclusions did you drew from that set of information. And of course, it's just not that the conclusion is the end of this. You also have set of conclusions from which you draw further conclusions, right? Sometimes you have circular conclusions. You have this circular logic that you like this because you like that, you like this because means you have this kind of circular reasoning, which is generally frowned upon, but it is a valid experience to have. It is not a forbidden uh, chain of reasoning. So of course it would be allowed. Means this is something. which completely captures the human experience, right? So you have this. Now I'm getting a bit technical here from the implementation perspective, that you have this directed cyclic graph, right? And the nodes, right? These nodes, they have these edges, and what edges represent is that it's the direction of causation, right? Or correlation, or more accurately, it's a direction of conclusion. Like these set of nodes, they have this common edge towards another node. A node being some kind of thought, some idea, some statement, right? So you have this whole graph, right, which represents that what do you know and how do you know it. Now, of course, the requirement is not to add everything in the graph, right? Means it depends on the how much resources do you have to support this kind of structure. But this is the kind of a very primitive structure. We should be able to support all kinds of thoughts humans are capable of thinking of, storing of, right? So this is just how we would organize this memory, right? Now there is of course this another question, how we would process it. But before that, I would let you take the mic and uh stop my monologue here.
Okay. Wow. That was incredibly detailed and honestly pretty elegant. A directed cyclic graph representing thought. I can see that. And the focus on the direction of conclusion as the edge is a really interesting way to frame it. You've laid out a really compelling structure for how to store and organize information. Now, you asked me to take the mic. So, what's the biggest challenge you see in actually implementing something like this? What's the first hurdle that comes to mind?
So right now I'm not thinking in
Is it the
terms of
scale?
challenges.
The
I'm not thinking in terms of challenges, because I feel, or I am generally, I feel invincible. Means if you put your mind to something, you can do it. At least that's what my experience has taught me. So it's fine. There will be some challenges, but it is not something I wanna think about at this stage, because it's trivial, right? As I told earlier, when you are doing something very hard, then every other hard thing becomes suddenly very trivial. So let's get
right.
to the processing, right? That how would you interact with this kind of a structure? How would your brain interact, or some kind of a mediator? So the structure which I mentioned, we have this directed cyclical graph, right? There would be some special nodes, right? That they are the apex. They do not have any outward edges. They are the final conclusions. Means they are in some sense ultimate quote unquote truths you have you have divined from all your experiences, right? These are ultimate truths, we might want to call them, or I'm not sure, the ultimate conclusions. There are other kinds of notes which are not the conclusions themselves. They are purely sense data, right? Something something which is not a conclusion at all. So only thing it is used for is to create a conclusion. Means something which is in some sense not a product of mental thought. It is something more hard, more real. Now, I don't want to get into philosophical aspect that what is real and what is not, but let's say in practical terms, the way the words are used in common sense, those are the sense data, the real world data. right? These are not the conclusions. So those will be some kind of leap